Sorry about that, guys. Technical stuff. So it looks like we're going to have a Shaman mirror match, although it's not going to be the same sort of Shaman mirror match that we've been watching, at least in recent memory, because that looks very much like Gaara's Shaman is a Crusher Shaman, and I have to admit, this is going to be the first time I've seen a Shaman running Arcane Giant. It'll be interesting to see how that performs. I suppose he's decided that it works very, very well in this Crusher build. I haven't seen it yet myself. This is going to be an awesome game, guys. And both players have a pretty awful start, which bodes very well for Gaara. The more late game deck, he's going to be able to drop Doomsayer whenever he wants to at least take 7 damage or clear the board. And both players are going to start by very ambiguously placing down some totems. The other player is not going to get any kind of read on what they're playing based off of this start. But I would say the Argent Horse Rider that comes down this turn definitely gives away to Gaara exactly what type of deck Iner is playing. Or at least the fact that it is not a Crusher Shaman like Gaara is. And actually, Iner's start is very, very helpful for Gaara, because Gaara is the guy right now that's playing the much slower deck. He's the one that wants this game to get into the late game, to put up his maybe Bog Creepers and Earth Elementals and Arcane Giants, and then place Ancestral Spirit on them. So the fact that Iner has not already bursted Gaara down to something like 20 health on turn 3 or 4, that's actually pretty good for Gaara. It's pretty good for Gaara that Iner got such a bad start. Only trying to work out what to play right now is very tricky. He is going to go with the Doomsayer plus playing a totem as well. No, he's playing Ancestral Spirit. Now this is a very interesting interaction here, because firstly it means if Iner does clear this Doomsayer, then it spawns another one which will die next turn. But secondly, if this Doomsayer survives until next turn, not only does it go off this turn, but it's then going to be on the board next turn, and Iner is going to have to deal with it yet again. This works out really, really well for Gaara, as he can just continue to put up totems, essentially making his things from below cheaper. It's really devastating for Iner to see this happen. It put a stop to Iner developing anything on the board for a number of turns. And if he wants to, Gaara can then come forward next turn, place Halazeel down as his first big minion. Halazeel does have a really good effect, but what a lot of people overlook is its very, very powerful stat line for a 5-drop. I believe it's a 4/6 from memory, but that might be wrong. But 6 health is a lot for any card to deal with. It breaches that barrier between the difference between 4 and 5 and 6 seem to be really significant in Hearthstone. And as we can see, if Gaara did decide to play Halazeel, then it would eat up 2 Rockbiter weapons or a Lava Burst. Instead, Gaara is going to actually maybe save Halazeel. He might feel like he may need to get some healing with that later. So he's just going to play one of his things from belows. No reason to play both at the same time. He can't do that yet anyway, but he's decided there's no reason to save that. I suppose he realizes that against this other Shaman, this other more aggressive Shaman, he will win if he just plays it nice and slow, heals himself when he needs to, and deals with all of Iner's threats. And Iner does seem to be playing very much into Gaara's hands here. The Faceless Manipulator doesn't seem to do much right now. But those Lava Shocks, I think it's possible that we may see Gaara play one this turn, and maybe even trade the thing from below into the Argent Squire. As Gaara's healing totem will heal him up anyway, and Gaara's not in any hurry to be dealing damage to Iner's face. He wants to survive and just completely dominate the board. Of course, my apologies. The thing from below will have to attack the Taunt Totem, but the second thing from below coming down, it may mean that Iner has to play Lightning Storm now. But even that, unless he's willing to waste the Rockbiter weapons as well, that Lightning Storm is not going to be enough to destroy Gaara's board. Alright, so it looks like Iner's hoping for a spell power totem. He's not gonna get it though. If he did get the spell power totem, well, even without, I suppose he could play Lightning Storm, double Rock Biter weapon, make both of the trades, and stick up the thing from below. It would be quite a tempo switcher, though it would also overload Iner and take away, well, really one of his win conditions, the Doomhammer into Rock Biter weapon win condition. I can't see any other choice that Iner has. He manages to keep 2 taunts on the board that way. There's the Lightning Storm. There's one Rock Biter weapon. And it looks like the second one's probably... it's going into the healing totem. Okay, so he values keeping the Divine Shield on the Argent Squire alive. Now we're going to start to see how relevant this Arcane Giant is in Gaara's deck. Unfortunately, at 9 mana, it's not going to be doing that much right now. But you can definitely see with how many spells Gaara has. Gaara still has 3 spells in his hand. It definitely seems like that Arcane Giant could be relevant later. Gaara is definitely playing very reactively here. Rather than trying to activate some incredible combo, he's literally just dropped his Faceless Manipulator to put up another 5/5 taunt in an attempt to get Iner to trade his 5/5 into it. Although, as we can see in Iner's hand, it's much more likely that the Lava Burst's going to come down, followed by, I suppose, a Totem and Abusive Sergeant here. Allowing Iner to continue to just develop an already powerful board and also smack 6 damage into the face. Gaara could, of course, just be like, alright, this board's enough. Let's play the Elemental Destruction. And then follow it up with a Lava Burst to clear everything, or almost everything, depending on if this rolls 4 or 5 on the thing from below. It rolled a 4, so unfortunately Gaara is not able to deal with everything, but almost clearing the board and not being overloaded at all is pretty good with a Shaman, especially with putting down another card that's going to draw a card every turn if it's not dealt with. That all being said, Iner pretty much picks up the best thing that he could have done right now, which is the Doomhammer. If he's going to win the game, this is going to be the card that allows him to do it. And luckily for him, Gaara doesn't have any taunts in his hand. He can hex one of his own minions, but that hardly counts. Meaning that it looks like Iner is going to be free to just continue hitting the face with Doomhammer, at least for now. Of course, Halazeal could provide a lot of healing later on. And that healing wave is huge as well. Not only is it going to be probably a 14 damage heal, but it's not going to cost Gaara anything to play. And Iner's going to put down everything, it looks like. He's saying, you've played your Elemental Destruction. I'm hoping you don't have a second one. Here's my hand. See what you can do with it. Of course, as we can see, the Arcane Giant is probably going to take out that thing from below, and then the Hex is going to... Oh my goodness! You know what? I take that back entirely. It looks like we're going to get Halazeal, Totem, and Lightning Storm, as that will heal Gaara up to full health, almost definitely, and deal with several of Iner's cuts. Maybe not, though. I suppose it only guarantees the close on the 1/1s. Which means, at the very least, that Flame Wreath Faceless is going to stick around. So instead, Gaara's going to opt to heal himself with Healing Wave, and yes, with Arcane Giant, that probably is going to be a full heal. And it looks like he's going to go with the first play that I described. The Hex on the Flame Wreath Faceless, the trade into the 5/5, and the Ken comes down as well. So, the interesting thing about this game is that Iner probably feels like, as long as Ken is all Gaara's got, he's got enough taunts and enough damage to slowly start chipping away at Gaara's health. But I imagine that this Halazeel into Lightning Storm will probably be enough to get the concede out of Iner. Because not only does it almost clear everything, only leaving one minion alive, it fully heals Gaara and leaves Iner with absolutely nothing. This is game over if I ever did see it. And Gaara is going to go ahead and take game number 1. Leaving Tempostorm at a 1-0 lead in this first series. You're going to need to hold on just a moment, guys. We seem to have a slight dispute in classes here. We're going to just take a very, very short break to sort this out and be right back, okay? I apologize for this. They've been ripping every turn so far, and they're going to continue with this same game. So I do apologize for that, guys. Accidents happen, but both players are carrying on. They're taking it like champs. So we are continuing with this Shaman versus Freeze Mage. And, you know, we've just had the totems and pings in the first couple of turns. You haven't missed anything. And this is going to be a really interesting matchup because, as I've said before, Freeze Mage and Crusher Shaman are both decks that don't see much play at all nowadays. I mean, little to none at all on the ladder. And not much at tournaments either, so this is a very interesting matchup. You could definitely make the argument that with Healing Wave and Halazeel in Gaara's deck, he may have the healing that is sufficient to win this game against Iner, but at the same time you could also make the argument that his deck is not fast enough to beat a Freeze Mage, and Freeze Mage can do that thing if they draw enough where with Thanos and Thurisan they can actually pull enough damage to win from 30 health in a single turn. And, I mean, according to the board right now, that Doomsayer is going to do what it needs to do. Gaara may have to play Ancestral Knowledge now and fish through his deck to see if he can find something that will allow him to deal with that Doomsayer. He may actually play Ancestral Spirit instead, just to make sure the thing from below survives anyway. Alright, so the Ancestral Spirit gets played. It does not actually give Gaara something to clear the Doomsayer, so this is getting really awkward now. Gaara could decide to play one of those fast sights to draw into something that might actually allow him to deal with the Doomsayer, or he might just give up on killing it, which he doesn't have any time to play the card now. It looks like whatever was drawn wasn't played. Hex would have done it as well. Ah, that is so frustrating for Gaara. He still does have a 5/5 thing from below, but it's nothing that Iner can't kill if he really wanted to. It looks like he's just going to focus on drawing instead. I think Iner has recognized that because there is so much card draw in Gaara's deck, the win condition here is save the Frostbolt, save the Frostbolts, save the Ice Lance, save the Fireball, save the Thanos, and wait until he can pull off this ultimate Emperor Thurasan and win the game in one turn. Wow, so Gaara is actually going to play his 0 mana Hex to destroy the Acolyte of Pain, because again, for the exact same reason that Iner played it in the first place. As I mentioned, Iner has realized his win condition is draw his entire deck, win as soon as possible. Draw until he gets Thurasan and then win in one turn. And Gaara has recognized, yeah, that's Iner's only win condition here. If I can win before he draws into those combo pieces, then I will win the game. Because Gaara has so many cards with high health and so many ways of preserving them against Iner's board clears, he is going to have ways of pushing a lot of damage, but the problem is, right now looking at Iner's hand, he is going to have to wait until he can get past 2 Frost Novas and 1 Blizzard before he can start dealing serious amounts of damage. Okay, so the Blizzard comes down first. Iner is going to be able to play Blizzard, Frost Nova, Ping, Flame Strike to guarantee the clear here. So it kind of depends on what Gaara draws now. Elemental Destruction doesn't do anything for him, to be honest, at this point in time. Ancestral Spirit does, though, because it means now, if Iner's plan... Oh my goodness, and so does the Faceless Manipulator. It means now if Iner's plan is to Frost Nova and then Flame Strike, but while pinging the one of the Arcane Giants, then it's just going to come back as a new 8 damage beat stick that can attack, even if formerly it was frozen. So that play will have really punished Gaara. Sorry, that play by Gaara was really punishing, and it is going to have punished Iner, because now, say Iner's next play was going to be, or could be, ping the Arcane Giant and play Flame Strike, it's not going to clear the board, far from it. That being said, Iner does now have a Pyroblast in hand, adding up everything, including the Thanos, that is, so 10 damage from Pyroblast, and then 7 from Fireball, 4 from Frostbolt, that's 20, and then another 4 from the other Frostbolt, 24, and 5 from Ice Lance. Over 2 turns, that's 29 damage, 30 if you count his hero power. Of course, Gaara does now have a free healing wave to play, which is a pretty big deal. And like I said before, this is where Gaara gets to be in a really good position. He's just going to keep playing his minions with a lot of health. He has a Hex for the worst case scenario, which is Iner playing Frostnova Doomsayer. And even then, Iner is in a pretty rough spot here. How is he going to prevent this damage? It's going to have to be another Frost Nova. Iner could consider playing Pyroblast here, but then that would just get met with Halazeel or Healing Wave. So Iner is going to start by fishing through his deck. Unfortunately, Flame Strike is almost useless at this stage in the game. Just because playing it now would mean that he's taking at least 16 plus 7, 25 damage next turn, which is not something, 23 damage next turn, sorry, which is not something that he can deal with facing right now. Is it coming down anyway? We could have Flame Strike, Ice Barrier. This essentially, or even, yeah, Flame Strike, Forgotten Torch is good. Essentially preventing Gaara from popping the Ice Block next turn. Gaara has 18 damage, including the Lava Shock in hand. That isn't enough to pop the Light Ice block, so Iner has essentially bought himself one more turn. The question is, though, with Gaara having Halazil and Healing Wave for free in his hand, is there really any way that Iner could ever deal enough damage? That is another 8/8 on the board. Picking up the second Fireball now means Iner has more than enough damage to kill Gaara over a series of turns, if he's able to live that long. Frost Nova and Ice Barrier both definitely help. But I think it's probably time. It's probably the time that Iner has to start hitting the face, and then assuming Gaara doesn't let his health drop below, let's see, 23 or 24 or something, then he will just win the game. Thanos, Frostbolt, Ice Lance, Thanos, Fireball, Frostbolt, Ice Lance, 7, 11, 16. Okay. So yeah, Gaara's health would have to get pretty low for him to be dead next turn. Of course, if Iner picked up the Roaring Torch, that would change things. Gaara picks up another Earth Elemental. Which isn't really relevant at this stage. Gaara is always going to have the damage he needs to kill Iner. It doesn't matter how many minions are on the board, they either all get frozen or none of them do. The question is, does Gaara heal now? Which he of course does. And he's healing the full amount, which is incredibly helpful. Recounting this hand. Frostbolt, Fireball, Ice Lance. Yeah, would have also not quite been 20, but still, Gaara is making the safe play here. And the fact that he has Halazil, plus Lava Shock in his hand, and you know, the thing is, what Gaara could do if he was desperate, he could play Halazil, Stormcrack one of his own cards to heal for 4, and then Lava Shock his opponent's face to make that a heal for 6. If he was even more desperate than that, he could play Halazil plus Elemental Destruction, which would only deal damage to his own minions, but it would also fully heal him. The problem that Iner faces is that, so if he now deals damage to the face, and then Gaara comes back with Halazil and fully heals, Iner can't then spend damage going face, knowing that it will then win in the game, because Gaara having Halazil on the board means that he'll just heal some more. So Iner would have to split his resources very carefully. It looks like Iner is actually saving all of his damage, maybe hoping for a Thaurissan. If everything in his hand was 1 mana cheaper, he'd be able to play all of those burn spells, which would be for 4, 8, 13, 20, 27 damage. It still wouldn't quite be lethal. But Alex Straza will help a lot. The only real question now being, can Iner live for long enough? Gaara will spend next turn popping that ice block, unless... Oh, sorry, yeah, he just will, because Frost Nova's gone. Gaara looks like he's quite happy to leave Iner at 6 health. He's thinking to himself, well, I've got 32 damage on the board, so he either stops everything or he stops some things. Or he either stops everything or he stops nothing. I win it. I win either way. The question is, does he now need to heal? He's decided not to, which does seem to be perfectly safe, at least for now. Interesting that Gaara decided to play the Stormcrack there. Maybe he was just in case Iner somehow had some way of clearing the board and that one extra damage would make the difference between him being alive and dead. Playing incredibly safe there. I suppose he decided there's no reason not to use the Stormcrack. I expect Hex to come down now. Oh, no I don't. Sorry. I would have missed lethal there, it looks like, but the spell powered in one comes down from Gaara. Gaara is gonna take. Either way, it has to be said, this Shaman deck of Gaara's is very impressive. And looking at Iner's hand right now, this is looking like a Malygos-centric druid. Malygos and Arcane Giant are, of course, cards that go perfectly well together in a deck. And this isn't exactly a bad pick from Iner now. Wrath and Swipe, both incredibly powerful cards against any deck in the game. Okay, so Gaara opting to make the turn 1 coin totem. He does have one thing from below in his hand. It's possible that he'll draw the other one soon, and I suppose the faster he can get those out for very little mana, the faster he can completely overwhelm the board with Ancestral Spirit and Faceless Manipulator. Fandral is a very good card for Iner to pick up here, although he may decide to innovate out Azure Drake instead, so that he can draw a card now and maybe draw a card later with Fandral and Wrath. It has to be said, other than this, Iner didn't actually have a play this turn, so I think the Drake was important there. Thanks to that extra Innovate pickup though, next turn Iner can play Fandral, Innovate out Wrath for 5 damage. Which would deal with a thing for below, if there was a thing for below on the board right now. Two Wraths. So we might still see Fandral innovate Wrath and then trade the Drake into the Doomsayer. I think it's important for Iner to deal with this Doomsayer at this point. Otherwise, he's allowing Gaara to get complete initiative and overwhelm the board with Thing from Below, followed by Earth Elemental. It might even be the case that we don't see Fandral this turn. He's actually going to swipe the Doomsayer. Solid play. It allowed for him to completely clear off the totems as well as the Doomsayer. Now the Thing from Below comes down, paving the way for Iner to Fandral innovate Wrath if he wants to draw a card. Instead, he's going to just play Drake innovate Wrath, which also draws one card, but it means he doesn't get a card draw from Wrath. That being said, it means that Iner is able to stay on curve better, and next turn play Fandral and the second Wrath without floating any mana. I think both were very solid ways of dealing with this board. Alright, so Iner does, he goes ahead, he clears the board. Gaara can go ahead and play Earth Elemental now, however, it doesn't seem ideal because it will restrict him to only having 3 mana next turn, and Iner actually has plenty of ways that he can do with Earth Elemental right now, thanks to Mulch, Fandral, Wrath, and of course the Azudrix on board. Looks like Gaara instead decides to just get rid of those Azudrix. Makes a lot of sense, but does mean that Gaara can't do anything next turn at all. Oh, okay, so the Moonfire, very, very sneaky there. Moonfire creeping in that one extra spell to get the Arcane Giant out 1 turn earlier than Iner would have otherwise been able to. Gaara having to just pass the turn. This is a dreadful position for Gaara to be in now. As Iner can go ahead, he can push 8, 9, 10, 11 damage with Fandral, Living Roots, and Hero Power if he chooses to play all of those cards. Alright, so we're probably going to see Hex Lightning Storm now. Unfortunately, Gaara doesn't seem to have a way of dealing with that Fandral. He could play Hex Elemental Destruction, but that will again leave him in the position where he can't do much next turn. He'd have 3 mana to play with. It would be a good amount of mana to play Healing Wave, though. Alternatively, he could just play Hex and Earth Elemental. Well, that would leave the Fandral alive. It would deal with the big amount of damage on the board. Gaara losing that Healing Wave there will not have felt good. The Hex comes down. The problem is with Gaara's Earth Elemental, and he probably realizes this, is that when it gets played, it will probably just die to Mulch straight away. And as a result, Gaara needs to try and save it for when he has an Ancestral Spirit, if that's possible. Gaara's in an interesting position here because where he's struggling is actually in competing with the Druid mana-wise. It's not card-wise. Luckily, he rolled high on the Fandral, meaning he's been able to completely clear the board. He could now consider playing the Earth Elemental, or he could slow down, play Farsight, or play Mana-Tide Totem with a token. Mana-Tide Totem with a totem. Apologies. Yeah, there's the Mana-Tide Totem. He's going to continue drawing cards here. I think what he's really hoping for is a Lava Shock, because he's going to be overloaded for 5 mana next turn, and that's not a nice position to be in. Earlier on, when he was overloaded by 5 mana, he had to completely pass the turn as a result. And while it wouldn't quite be that devastating for Gaara this time, it's something he'd still rather avoid. So if he can pick up that Lava Shock, that will be very important. Meanwhile, Iner actually taking the time to draw another card. He can actually slip in Arcane Giant here if he wants to. There it is. I suppose when do you ever not want to play an 8/8 for 3 mana? But the Hex comes down, which is not as punishing for Iner as a Mulch on Earth Elemental. There's Malygos! Having just used up the Hex, I'm sure Gaara is panicking right now. He doesn't seem to have a surefire way of dealing with that Malygos, and it only takes for Iner to draw a couple of spells and this game is over. Earth Elemental plus Doomsayer. And that actually is really awkward for Iner, because I'm sure he would have liked to have used the mulch on the Earth Elemental here, but it looks like he may have to use it on Doomsayer. Of course, that does depend on what this Wild Growth gives him. Power of the World is not going to actually make Iner's life any easier. So he is going to have to use the mulch on the Doomsayer. That is an... Oh! Wait. Oh, of course, because of the frog. He actually has just enough damage to deal with it. That is... it turns out Power of the World was a lot more helpful than I thought. Another healing wave from Gaara. If he can roll a little bit higher on this one, then he has a much better chance of surviving for a long time. While he doesn't have a method of dealing with Malygos immediately, Iner only has one card in his hand, and we've established that that's not a spell. So healing back up to 28, playing an 4 mana 8/8, Gaara is suddenly in a much more stable position, even facing off against this Malygos. But that Nourish could well spell the end for Gaara. If we see a Swipe or a Living Roots or a Wrath or something here. There's a Moonfire, that's 6 damage. Raven Idol is probably going to give him the Swipe for the other 4. Or the other 9, I guess. No, but a Wrath for 8 is looking pretty good right now. Wrath for 8 will deal with that giant immediately, allowing Malygos and the frog to go face for 6. Gaara really needs to draw into an answer for this Malygos. Ancestral Spirit. Usually a card that this shaman is very happy to see, but not in this situation. Okay. Museum Curator giving the shaman a weapon. That's not something you see every day. But it looks like Gaara is so desperate to draw cards. He's gone with the Loot Hoarder. He's going to play that with Cairn and a Totem. Just hoping that Iner doesn't draw the damage he needs. We could see one of the crazier Yogg-Sarongs here with 5 spell damage. Although I imagine that with Malygos safely on the board, he might just control the board. Wow! Ancestral Spirit on Leponome because he knows he needs an answer for that Malygos. That Nourish, again, is absolutely huge. All it takes is a swipe from Iner, and he's able to completely control the board easily. He got it! Final card. I imagine that swipe is going face. It looks like Iner is calculating how quickly he'd be able to win the game here. Swipe for 5, Malygos for 5, Moonfire for 6. Sorry, swipe for 9, Malygos for 5, Moonfire for 6. That's 20 damage. He almost has lethal here. It looks like he's not afraid of the Cairn either. He's just going to start going face. And while that Faceless Shambler would be good if it could copy Malygos and taunt for it, it can't actually do that. First thing we'll see here, I think, is Loot Hoarder. Because Gaara just hopes for a way of dealing with that Malygos. Thing from below is pretty helpful. if Malygos can't hit the face, it doesn't look like Iner has any spells that will do damage to the face here, so Gaara may be able to hold on for just one more turn if he Ancestral Spirits this thing from below. And then also plays Faceless Shambler. It's not great, as Malygos can kill all of these things in one hit. But it's a start. Okay, so with the Lightning Storm and the Storm Crack, if Malygos does have to trade into Thing from Below or Ken, then it... Wait, no, Ken is able to trade. My apologies, Ken is able to trade and destroy the Malygos. So, if Iner is so close, if he can't quite grab that final 3 damage to the face, this game is over. Of course he does have Yogg-Saron. If he's been calculating what his cards are, he will know what that final card is. And if it's a swipe, then he's just won the game already. If he's not sure what this final card is, and I'm not sure what the card is, I have to admit I haven't kept up with his entire deck. It may be the case that Yogg-Saron is the safest play here. And here it is. And Yogg-Saron is able to attack, meaning that it got charge, which, unless Gaara gets healed or somehow gets another taunt, looks like it might be the end for Gaara this game. Oh, wait a second. Oh, Sinister... Wait. Oh, okay. I was confused because Iner's cards were still glowing, but there you go. That was, But he's probably decided, if I want my best shot at beating a Druid, I play Druid. And that is a Beast Druid! Gaara is definitely not sticking to the norm in terms of decks here, as this will be one of the first Druids that we've seen in this tournament at all. And I'm excited. I guess it's time to find out once and for all which Druid is better, the Mali Yogg token Druid or the Beast Druid. Beast Druid is supposed to be more aggressive, I suppose, but looking at their stats, Iner has a Fandral, which is going to lead into Raven Idol and Living Roots. Gaara doesn't have that much he can do this turn to deal with that. He can just Wild Growth. Raven Idol is getting Iner a lot of value here. Living Roots is also gonna give him a pretty good board. The question is the value gained from this Raven Idol gonna be good enough to outrun this very aggressive Druid deck? Based on the start, yes, it looks like it might be. Not only that, but Iner is picking up a second Raven Idol. It looks like he's not worried at all about tempo here. He's just thinking, yeah, I'll just continue to pick up the value. Let's get another minion that I wouldn't have originally had, and another spell. Sylvanas Windrunner! That is one thing to be said about this game so far. Iner has no idea that Gaara is actually running a Beast Druid as opposed to a regular Ramp Druid. He's seen no signs of this. So it's possible that he may regret that Sylvanas decision a little bit later when he finds out what sort of Druid Gaara's is. Gaara is going to just deal as much damage to this Fandral as he can. He'll be able to deal with it next turn with his hero power, still without revealing which type of Druid he is. I imagine it will come as quite a surprise to Iner when he does find out. And luckily for Gaara, Iner doesn't actually have anything he can do this turn. Yes, he could play Living Roots for 2 damage plus 2 1/1 saplings if he wanted to. But then he would be playing right into Swipe. It might be the case that Iner just hero power passes. No, he is going to go with the Living Roots. He is playing into Swipe, which as we can see, of course, Gaara does not even have anyway. Two innovates. So Gaara is able to innovate out the Curator if he wants to. And then innovate out his Hero Power to deal with Fandral. That, or he could just play Druid of the Claw and innovate out Hero Power. Looks like he's going with the Druid of the Claw. It means next turn he can actually, if this Druid of the Claw were to survive, he could play Menagerie Warden to make it 2 4/6s with Taunt. Which doesn't quite seem as strong as the Stranglethorn Tiger combo, but it still does seem pretty good. And if Iner does decide he really wants to clear that Druid of the Claw, he could play Thanos with Wrath. That would do it. I suppose the question is which of these plays works best in the long run. He's going to go with the Thanos Wrath. I suppose he's actually playing around Menagerie Warden, possibly without even realizing it, and preserving his saplings by using the Moonfire. Doing what the best players do with this deck, and not waiting and holding on to that Moonfire with everything he's got. He's actually using it as removal, which he's quite happy to do. Stranglethorn Tiger there seems like a very big pickup, although it looks like this turn, no matter what Gaara decides to do, he will be giving away which type of deck he's running. But at the same time, maybe he's not complaining when he thinks that on turn 7 he's actually going to curve into 3 5/5s on the board. Looks like Innovate is going to come down to deal with that Blood Mage Thanos there. Though Iner now does have the ability to ramp a lot, or draw a lot of cards if he wants to. Instead, he may decide to play the Cthulhu's Chosen or Violet Teacher instead to establish board. Nope, he's going to play the Arcane Giant that he just got off the top. 8, 9, 10, 14. Iner actually has lethal in his hand right now. And I don't believe that Gaara can do anything about it. He can't quite deal with the Arcane Giant. Okay, so if Gaara were to Hero Power, put Living Roots and a Tiger into a sapling each, he'd be at 14 health. Arcane Giant would do 8, Swipe would do 4, 12, Hero Power would do 5. Okay, so if he made that exact play, Hero Power, Living Roots into 1/1, Tiger into other 1/1, pass, then he can survive one more turn. But it is looking to me like this game is pretty over. Because even if that was the only way he could survive, I doubt Gaara would ever make that play. Because at one point, you have to realize, if you're playing to survive, you're not playing to win. Hang on, I just made the rookie error and forgot that the Curator has Taunt. Does that change things? It does change things. My apologies, guys. Just a few days ago, I was casting a tournament with someone else who made that mistake, and I was the one that did not forget the Curator had Taunt. So I'll hold my hands up and say that was a mistake. And Gaara is very much still in this. Though Iner is still dramatically favoured here, Sylvanas is a play that would mean that Gaara has to tread very lightly in whatever he does next. Swipe means that Iner is potentially dealing 9 damage to the face, leaving Gaara at 3 health. Looks like that's exactly what's going to happen. Now all it takes for Iner is a Druid of the Claw, Swipe, Living Roots, or anything like that to just win the game very quickly. Not only that, but Gaara doesn't actually have the damage he needs to deal with Arcane Giant, and he is going to be giving game number 4 to Iner. Picking a Innovate from Raven Idol was very sensible there from Iner. Knowing that Zoo decks are very, very aggressive and that the only way he is to win is if he can get his bigger threats or bigger means to defend himself out first, it looks like he's going to want all the ramp that he can possibly get. It'll be interesting to see if he tries to establish the early Fandral or if he goes for next turn, maybe Innovate, Nourish, Wrath. Of course, Gaara is able to start beating Iner down, both by placing this Direwolf Alpha, which is a threat that does need to be dealt with, just like Knife Juggler and Imp Gangboss are. And Darkshark Councilman. I mean, all of the Zoo cards are threats that need to be dealt with. But he's also beating down Iner for 4 damage, thanks to the Abusive Sergeant there. With 2 Moonfires, though, Iner could play Innovate, Nourish... Innovate, Nourish to ramp, Wrath on the Direwolf Alpha, and 2 Moonfires to just put a stop to everything that Gaara has. Although that does mean he's using up both of his Moonfires. Playing Fandral here, I think, is slightly too weak to power Overwhelming. So it looks like the Nourish Moonfire play maybe everything he has. Unless he decides to hold the Nourish, just play Wrath with the Moonfires, and then draw cards with Nourish later. Although I think as the Druid, you want as much ramp as possible against a Zoo. He's going to go with the Nourish to ramp up the mana, the Wrath to the Direwolf Alpha, and at least 1 Moonfire, if not both, to clear up those weak minions. Oh! My apologies, he's not actually playing the Wrath, he's saving that to play with Fandral next turn. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So Iner has put Gaara in a position where the Direwolf has survived, so Gaara is just going to build up more and more of a board. Dark Peddler, an incredibly strong card for Gaara to have now, even if all he picks up is a lowly Squire here. He's just going to keep putting threats on the board. Iner is going to need all of the swipes he can possibly muster, because he's going to want to deal with this board, and then he's going to want to deal with the Forbidden Ritual board. It's definitely plausible now that Iner plays Fandral Wrath, but even that seems like it doesn't quite do enough. The board that Gaara currently has will be able to deal with Fandral before it managed to get any value. And this hand that Iner has is a very Fandral friendly hand. We're looking at Raven Idol and Power of the Wild. 2 cards that work best with the card. I expect Gaara will probably either play Lowly Squire, Life Tap, and Double Trade. Or maybe he'll just Double Trade and play Forbidden Ritual. Or maybe Lowly Squire and Forbidden Ritual. That's possible as well. Forbidden Ritual is a... Wait, is he going face? No. Forbidden Ritual is a good way of just holding back his important resources, filling up the board for Sea Giant's potential landing next turn, depending on what Iner did now. If Iner just played 2 minions, then, or even 1 minion and didn't clear anything, then he would be able to... Then Gaara would be able to play Sea Giant next turn, with Lowly Squire as well. Iner plays the Raven Idol and gets an Innervate? Wait, what? Okay. I'm not exactly sure what Iner is hoping... Oh! Oh wait, no, it just didn't show us the selection. Oh, so Iner went with a minion. And actually getting on with the token as well. That works very, very well with Power of the Wild. Able to clear off 2 of those 1/1s thanks to his Moonfire in hand. You can imagine that Iner is hoping desperately to draw into Yogg-Saron at some point in the next few turns. He has just prevented Gaara from playing the Sea Giant, although with Power Overwhelming and Defender of Argus, if he chose to, Gaara could clear the whole board here, though that would leave him with only a 2/3 Argus on board. We might see Lowly Squire tap Power Overwhelming here, which would leave the 3/2 Dragonling mech on the board from Iner. But give Gaara more cards and more ways of dealing with whatever Iner draws next. It looks to me like Gaara is in a very strong position now, unless Iner is to draw into a Nourish or a Yogg-Saron when he can use it. Drake is not bad at all. Drake into Living Roots or Wrath would allow him to clear this Argus. Power of the Wild doesn't quite do it, but it might just be time to start playing it as a Panther. Doomguard, a brutal pickup for Gaara there. While it means he won't be playing Sea Giant anytime soon, it does allow him to clear the board, and barring Iner picking up something like Wrath, that Doomguard was going to be around for a while, but the Wrath comes up. The interesting decision Iner has to make now is that he can pretty much only win this game if he draws into Malygos or Yogg-Saron or something of that caliber very, very soon. So it could be the case that Iner decides to Wrath the Lowly Squire for 1, because he's that desperate to draw into more cards. Nourish is definitely exactly what he wanted to see there. Swipe is good. Malygos is good. Okay, so Iner is back in the game. If Iner is able to develop Malygos, not die, and leave Gaara with no methods for clearing it, then he might actually take this game. But a second Doomguard is going to come down, which is going to make the not dying part of Iner's plan a little bit more difficult there. That being said, a 0-mana 8/8 is going to come down here. Potentially Violet Teacher's Swipe, if Iner's really afraid of dying. If not, he might decide to just go Arcane Giant, Malygos, and assume Gaara doesn't pick up the extra 3 damage he needs. Though against a Warlock, that's very risky. Abusive Sergeants, Power Overwhelmings, Soulfires, Dark Peddlers. There are so many ways that Gaara could pick up this last little piece of damage. And he gets 2 tries to get there. Looks like Violet Teacher's Swipe, Arcane Giant would be the safer play. Okay, so he goes with what we consider the safer play. And Defender of Argus is going to be strong. It is going to protect 8 damage from Iner's side of the board. But the thing is, this is where Gaara is going to start to lose his steam in the long run. Crazed Alchemist doesn't do much at all, apart from protect another 3 damage from Iner. And Iner is going to now be able to develop the Malygos without too much fear of dying himself. Looks like Gaara is taking a very sensible route there, trading in the Doomguard into the Violet Teacher, so that essentially it would have 2-for-1'd the Arcane Giant in Gaara's hopes. But unfortunately, Iner picks up the knowledge, but he decides to trade in the Arcane Giant anyway. A little bit risky with only 14 health and facing down 5 damage on the board. That is 7 damage once the Direwolf Alpha comes down. It looks like Iner is only going to win soon if he can pick up a spell. Because Gaara now has 2 taunts on the board. He's not even bothering to trade. He's being like, right, now it's kill or be killed. And unfortunately for Gaara, it looks like that is actually going to be killed. Because I believe with a 9 damage Swipe, 4 damage Malagos, and 8 damage Arcane Giant, Iner is going to take the series for Anox at a 3-2 lead.